2. Wow.
Whoa.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Anime Club After Dark, the podcast that delves into all things anime, manga, and otaku culture related. I'm your host, kind of, Alex, but you can call me Senpai, and joining me tonight, we have our czar of source material, John.
Hello, everyone out there. I'm actually going to be your host tonight.
But you're so bad at doing intros.
I am just so bad. Like,
onegaishimasu.
freaking Alex didn't want me to do the intro. I was going to do it all monotone.
You liar.
He was like, no, we can't do that. I was like, all right, well, you can host then.
I do want to say, before we get started tonight, it is storming mightily outside where I live, so if you hear thunder in the background, I very deeply apologize.
Thunderbolts and lightning. Very, very frightening.
To me.
Galileo.
All right, before we get a copyright strike.
Oh, shit. Yeah, you're right. YouTube, please. YouTube-sama. Anyway.
What are we talking about tonight, John?
We're gonna talk about Netflix's first season of Dragon's Dogma. Now, I'm not sure if anyone else knows, but Netflix has this thing where they like to make anime in 3D CG, and it's fucking terrible.
Well, they like to license anime that gets made.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know what Dragon's Dogma is, it's a video game from Capcom. I believe it came out in 2012, and it's a dark fantasy adventure type game. I personally like it a lot. It's obviously not as good as The Witcher or Dark Souls when it comes to dark fantasy, but the story is actually pretty crazy. Now, Alex, you've never played the game, right?
No, I have never played the game. In fact, I mean, I knew the name. I'd heard the name before, but that's about all I knew about it. I didn't really know what it was about. I knew nothing about the characters. I didn't even know it had even gotten any kind of anime adaptation until very, very recently.
Yeah, surprisingly enough, Netflix was like, hey, we've got a new anime coming out. It's called Dragon's Dogma. And I was like, yo,
here,
what?
Consume this product.
Freaking Capcom is making another anime? What?
This is the third anime adaptation in recent times of a Capcom franchise. We've had, this, obviously. Was it Resident Evil?
Well, those are movies. They have Resident Evil movies, but...
Yeah, okay, fair enough. But you also have the Ace Attorney anime, which was a thing.
Yeah, and Capcom very long ago, wow, has it been over 13 years now? Maybe more since Devil May Cry came out?
Yeah, it has actually.
Ugh, God, Capcom does not like to make anime, but they're all based on video games, which is cool. I like the video game franchises of Capcom stuff. But
yeah, I mean, they're one of the biggest video game companies in the world out there, so
yeah. Anyway, so this is not really made by Netflix. They just produced it and gave money to them. This actual studio that made this anime, I want to say that term loosely, anime, is Sublimation. This is their second series that they've ever made. Their first production was something called Walking Meat, and it was an anime movie. Most of Sublimation's...
Great title, by the way.
Yeah, Walking Meat. I've never heard of it before, and I didn't really want to check it out either, because Sublimation is a company that primarily deals in just 3D CG and CGI and making...
Yeah, and specifically model making. They make character models in 3D CG.
Yeah, they've done works CG stuff for Psycho-Pass, Love Live, Weathering With You, apparently they worked on as well for some CG stuff, and I was like, whoa, what the fuck? So this company gets around and does CG, so this is what they do. So to no one's surprise, Dragon's Dogma is in full 3D CG and CGI, but also has some hand-drawn parts, which is very confusing to me, but we'll get to that later. Anyway, it's directed by Shinya Sugai. I'm butchering that. Please don't hate me.
Sugai.
Shinya Sugai. It seems like he's an in-house director. He does a lot of directing for a bunch of their works. It's like a CGI director and CG animator for Sublimation. So I'm not sure how extensive his work is. He has 15 or 20 titles that he's been CGI director, animator / director for, so I guess he's the one to go to for stuff. And the music is by Tadayoshi Makino, and he is the original composer for the 2012 game series. And I am so glad that they brought the game series OST maker to the frickin' anime, because holy shit, do I love the music in Dragon's Dogma, and also in the video game. Like, that's kind of like my best point of this the show. But we can talk about that in a little bit. I just wanted to move on to talking about the visuals real quick. So, freaking 3D CGI, freaking why? Why Netflix? Why do you do this to me? Like, Dragon's Dogma it's a action JRPG. So I was going into it with the knowledge of, the video game story. I was like, the story is actually pretty nuts. Like, I was wondering how they're going to do the story. But when I saw it was 3D CGI, I was like, oh no. Like, oh man.
You had one of those realizations like, oh, why?
Well, because every time I see 3D CG and CGI in anime, it's never like a full-blown movie fucking AAA Hollywood title. So they don't have the budget to make it actually look good and flow well. And
you and I have talked about this, and we actually are planning on doing an episode of the podcast soon about 3D CGI and like why we keep seeing more and more of it.
Yeah. But
so I don't really want to delve too much into why they did it, but
yeah, I mean,
it's a thing. I mean, it's not great.
Yeah, the visuals in especially since, like, I'm gonna be honest here, the PC port of the game has better fucking graphics in their 3D CG. So
I will say one thing it does have going for it is the faces are pretty expressive. I mean, but that's kind of like all 3D CG. Like, they usually have very expressive faces.
But there's also some parts, like I said earlier, about, like, they'll have hand-drawn animation parts. Like, there's a part where there's these kids in Ethan's village. He's like, Ethan is the main character for Dragon's Dogma.
Yeah. That's the flashback scene you're talking about.
Yeah, the flashback scene. And then the kids are freaking hand-drawn. And
yeah, I noticed that. I was like, wait a minute, what? Did I click the wrong button? Is this the same show?
Yeah. And then, like, Olivia comes out, and she's still 3D CG, and she's talking to these 2D animated kids. I'm like, what the fuck, dude?
It's kind of like that Berserk. Remember Berserk 2016, where it switched back and forth between 3D CG and like 2D animation? Well, it's like 2D, that same thing.
So in the 2D animation in Berserk, at least in 2016, was for when he did flashbacks, like memory flashbacks.
Yeah.
So that was like a creative direction they went in. Like, flashbacks will be 2D because that's the old style, but new style is 3D CG.
Just still from a cinematography standpoint, it was so weird.
Yeah, and especially since, like, there was a battle scene later in the freaking show where Ethan is about to fight the fucking dragon, and he fucking transitions from 3D CG to 2D back to 3D CG. And I'm like, wait, what? I had to replay that battle because I was like, hold the fuck on here. Did you just transition to 2D CG while he climbs the fucking dragon? And then when he gets onto the dragon, he's back to 3D CG? Like, what the fuck? Why?
Can I also point out, why is Ethan the only character in this goddamn show that is buff as fuck?
Because he's the Dark Arisen. Or no, he's the Arisen, not the Dark Arisen.
But he was buff before it all happened.
Because he was a hunter. But yeah, just
he looked like he goes to the gym 3 times a day.
Yeah, and I really like the visuals in the game because it's not like amazing looking compared to something like, I don't know, Dark Souls. Dark Souls looks amazing. It's dark and grimy, and I fucking love the lore. But in Dragon's Dogma, the game, it doesn't look bad, and the background art is very basic in this one, and it's all hand-drawn background art. But for the most part, it's not very colorful. It's not very, like, good. It's subpar. It's a shame because this is supposed to be a dark fantasy, high fantasy game / show, and there's nothing really that draws you in to the scenarios other than, like, here's the character models and they're talking and fighting. Like, oh, okay. No one cares about the background. No one cares about anything really. And I'm like, what the fuck? And it's also inconsistent because in the first episode when we meet Ethan and he's hunting with whoever that kid was and he fights the wolves, they actually went all out for the, like, fight scene, quote unquote fight scene, for the first 15 seconds where, like, it's actually fluid, where he fights the wolves, the dire wolves. But then, like, in the exact same freaking, like, the next episode where Ethan goes out and he saves that town or whatever, right? And then there's that riot where they storm the castle. It's all 2D hand drawn, but stills with voiceover. And I'm like, yo, what the fuck happened to your budget? Like, did you just run out of animation at the end of the second episode? So you're like, shit, guys, we'll just make stills and pan over them with sound effects. Like, what the fuck? And then you go to the next episode, then there's another battle scene, there's fluid movement, and then they're like, fucking, why? I don't understand. It's so inconsistent, man. Like,
can I just say that kid in the first episode, Lewis, I think his name is
Ruiz.
Yeah, Rui, whatever. We're not doing this again with fucking B-stars.
Okay.
Reminds me of Show. Just kind of cheeky and like,
the cheeky, sassy,
nothing
fucking...
bad can happen to me. Go.
Freaking yeah. Oh god. And it's like, it's so weird because I get it, budget constraints, and obviously they couldn't animate every single fight scene. They only had 7 episodes, blah blah blah, this and that. But there are a lot of still shots and a lot of panning and music playing over it throughout the series. Like, I want to say it happens like 4 or 3 times. I can't remember exactly, even though I just finished watching it yesterday. Because it's as much as I like Dragon's Dogma, like, I love the game series, I love the story and all that stuff. The anime itself, because of how lackluster the visuals were, it was just kind of boring to watch, And if I'm being honest here, if I had never seen or played Dragon's Dogma, I would have probably dropped this at episode 3 because I would have been like, fuck this is stupid.
I mean, yeah, if it were like a regular length anime, I'd probably agree with you. But the fact that it was only 7 episodes, even if I outright hated it, I was like, well, fuck it, it's 7 episodes.
Yeah, there's a lot of big brain like things that have to do with the story and why they show 7 episodes. Like, it kind of seems like they made 7 episodes as a concept, like for Capcom. Like, hey, maybe if people are interested in this enough, Capcom, maybe you'll let us do a second season, because
kind of like they did with Castlevania.
Yeah, like, well, except Castlevania was like, what, 3 episodes for their concept?
4. The first season was 4 episodes.
Was it 4? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it feels like. Wait, Castlevania is Capcom as well, isn't it?
Are they owned by or is it done by Capcom? I don't think so.
Yeah, no, it's, I swear, I don't know. I should know. I don't know, but I should
Yeah,
know.
you should. Mr. Czar of source material.
Dude, I'm tired. All right. Like, anyway, that's all I really have to say about the visuals. It's lackluster.
Castlevania is owned by, or is done by Konami.
Oh, that's right, Konami, the other fucking game company. Yeah.
The second of 3 Japanese game companies.
What's the other one? Nintendo?
Nintendo.
Yeah. No, FromSoft is Japanese. The people who do Dark Souls.
Okay, the big 3 Japanese game companies.
Yeah, fair. Everyone else is pretty small. But I would argue that, anyway, we're not talking about video games
we're not
here.
talking about video games. But you definitely want to talk about the music, because I know that's the thing you like the most.
Okay, so first off, there is no traditional OP-ED for an anime. It's just like music that plays over. I actually like the OP quite a lot, because it's like serious, like game type music. Like I said earlier, Tadayoshi.
It's like a high fantasy. It's like something you'd hear in Game of Thrones, honestly.
Yeah, like it's a dark fantasy. It's high fantasy setting, and Tadayoshi Makino, hashtag bless his heart for this freaking banger of an OST, because if he did not do this music, I probably would have dropped it, because I love not Dark Souls. I was about to say Dark Souls. I love the OST for Dragon's Dogma. Like, it's freaking amazing. It sets the mood just right. They have it just feels very thematic. And I love how they designed the music, the OSTs that plays, the subtleties of all the things that he does in certain scenes. It plays like a freaking cutscene in a video game. And that's what I liked about it, because I was like, oh, this is based on a video game. It sounds fucking great.
Yeah, I kind of agree. And I kind of like this whole thing of not the non-traditional OPs and EDs, where it maybe songs without lyrics, or just like some
like
orchestral music,
they're
or
theme
choirs
songs.
Or whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
I kind of like this. Castlevania did the exact same thing, and I think it worked great in that too.
Yeah, well, I like it for the OP and the ED, because it's like, this isn't a traditional anime where it's based on a video game, and when it has just like this theme song, like just a couple notes playing and like graphics playing, it makes it more thematic. It makes it more immersive as well.
Yeah.
Because, now we're not treating it like some 12 episode anime, like find out next week on Dragon Ball Z. Like,
dun dun dun.
Yeah. Other than the OST being fucking amazing, the sound design was basic bitch tier. Like, it wasn't it wasn't impressive. It wasn't bad. Like,
a lot of stock sound effects though.
Yeah, and again, it could have just been budget constraints, but
it could have. Also, if you pay attention really close, you can hear the Dio time stop sound effect from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure used multiple times in this when people get thrown backwards.
Yeah, like they do the fucking Tokiwo Tomare sound effect, Zawodo, and then like it actually goes slow mo. And this is one thing that is cool about 3D CG. It's that when 3D CG is filmed, they can film it like it's real life set, so they can have like a suspended camera in this frame and model that they build, so they can actually do that and do like a fucking swoosh around. Because in one of the episodes, I believe in episode, I think it was 5, Greed. Yeah,
the one with the Lich
5,
King. Yeah,
the episode that was, the one with the Lich King. They start it off with like a 3D model of like the fight that's happening, but it keeps expanding, so it looks super cool. Like
it's almost like there's a free, like a panning camera that's just freely flowing around the action as it's frozen, and that actually is a really cool effect, which you could not do with 2D animation.
Yeah, like think it harkens back to like freaking Halo. I think it was Halo 3 that had the ad for Halo 3 where everything was like it had that sad music playing, and then it starts off with like the chief in the center, and then it just keeps expanding out, and you see more and more of the story in the battlefield. Like that's a really cool and very good way to like shoot a shot, because it shows more of a story as it expands, and it's really cool, man. It's a cool effect. And that's one thing that I can say, good job 3D CG, but God, it looks so bad. It's one of those, like, it was cool as an effect, but they obviously did it because they couldn't freaking afford to animate it. The fight scene where he fights like a million skeletons. And it's like, oh God. Like, where did they spend all their money? Because I didn't see anything that should have been super expensive to animate. Maybe
it clearly wasn't the sound design.
It clearly wasn't. Maybe they spent all their money getting Tadayoshi Makino to do the soundtrack. Maybe that they're like, hey,
it's like, hey, I'll do this, but I'm gonna need a lot of money.
Maybe, like, that was the only thing that I really liked about the entire series. But the voice acting, though, this was shot and made for English. Like, that's the default language, and
much like Castlevania.
Yeah. And one thing that I'm not sure if it's because it's subtitled on Netflix, but they like to do this thing where the English subtitles will match what the English voices are saying. And because I know a little bit of Moonrune, I understand a little bit of Japanese, they say a lot of different things and gets translated differently. So it was just weird. They'd be saying something completely different in Japanese compared to English.
It must be like what the Japanese feel like when they watch American shows with subtitles.
I mean, funny fact, little side tangent. The Good Place is on Netflix right now, and I have it set in Japanese for some reason. Maybe because I was watching Dragon's Dogma in Japanese, but The Good Place was being dubbed in Japanese while I was watching it and reading the subtitles, and I'm like, this is actually hilarious. Like, the subtitles were spot on too. Like the Japanese words they were saying were exactly what the English subtitles meant. But I was like, this sounds really not Japanese. Like, this commentary and how everything's flowing sounds exactly like an English cast would say. And it's just interesting, like, it's a reverse dub. It is. For us, we're always used to hearing Japanese or animes being dubbed for Japanese and then translated to English. So it always feels weird for us. But, like, now it's the opposite. And it's just like, oh, this is so uncommon. But it's also cool.
Yeah. I will say one thing, because I don't know, did you watch it in Japanese or English?
I watched it in English and Japanese. So, sir, there are certain parts where I was like, I'm curious how the English would sound, and I'm curious how I predominantly watched it in Japanese because,
okay,
I'm going to be honest here. The English VAs, they're not bad. The guy who does Ethan, the main character, is good. I think he does a good job.
Yeah, that's
portraying
Greg
Ethan.
Chun.
Yeah, Greg Chun. Everyone else though, like Christina V, she does Olivia, the wife of the main character. She does a great job. Because I love Christina V. I've been a fan of hers for a long time now. But other than those two, everyone else is kind of subpar. And maybe it might be the fact that every episode we meet new characters. There's new settings and characters we meet after each episode. So we don't really see anyone more than once, right, in the series.
Yeah.
So all the people they hired were just kind of like throwaways, and I was like, this is kind of stupid.
Yeah, except for the two soldier dudes that show up in 2 episodes. You really, like, once you see these people in 1 episode and the episode's over, you're not going to see them again. I feel like the guy who voiced the dragon, who was David Lodge, I feel like maybe he did a good job, but he was fucking bass boosted to hell.
Yeah, like, because the dragon's supposed to have a deep, surly voice. Yeah. And
I also want to point out from the first episode, again, the boy Lewis, fucking hysterical fake Scottish accent.
Yeah, they have really bad
I
accents.
laughed my ass off the first time I heard it. It's like, oh my god, this is awful.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember the accent that they have in the game. They have like an English accent, sort of, not a Scottish accent in the game. But some people have like a different accent, not English accent. It's weird. So I didn't really understand the directional choice with like the regional voice acting. Like maybe Cassidy.
And not everyone has it either. Like I would understand if like they were all trying to go for like an English voice or a Scottish voice or a Welsh voice or something like that. But then you get these people and it's like they're speaking like with an American accent. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's very inconsistent.
It's like well, Christina V is Olivia. I mean, she did a good job, obviously, but she's not putting on any accent.
Yeah, she's just speaking like normal. But one thing I did not like, another thing, not just one thing, another thing I didn't like about the English voice acting was the sound mixing for certain characters, like especially Christina V's character. I could tell that when she recorded this, whoever did the sound mixing didn't do a really good job at editing out like her sound. It sounds like she's in a room that's a little bit too closed off because I can hear it bouncing off of the foam, if that makes sense. I can't really describe how it sounds, but it doesn't sound like it's fluidly mixed in like freaking
It doesn't
Ethan's
sound
voice.
like all of these voices were recorded in the same studio, which they weren't because of, a virus from an unspecified location.
Yeah, the Kung Flu.
Yeah.
I'm allowed to say it. I'm Chinese.
A lot of well, actually, I think all of this was done, post-COVID. So a lot of the English VAs were recording in studios that they'd built into their own houses.
Yeah, so it's just something I noticed, and it's not something I would say would overall detract from the show, because, again, Christina V does a great job voice acting, but I did hear it, and it did kind of annoy me.
Yeah. And to be fair, what you're talking about is something you're really only gonna pick up on if you have really high quality audio equipment. If you're just using basic headphones, you're not really gonna hear it that well.
Or if you're just watching it through a TV and you don't have like a fucking 7.1 surround sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're listening to it on like $20 speakers that you bought at Walmart, you're gonna be good.
Yeah. So I did watch it predominantly in Japanese, so I liked it in Japanese better just because the main cast in Japanese, they're pretty like top tier actors. Like the guy who does Ethan is I should have researched this more, but I didn't want to talk too much about it because it's not phenomenal voice acting. It's just like it's decent anime voice acting. That's what I feel like, decent Japanese dubbed anime voice acting. The main character Ethan is voiced by the guy who does Tomiya from Clannad. I don't know the guy's name.
Yuichi Nakamura.
Yeah, Yuichi Nakamura. So it's not bad. I don't know anyone else's name because I didn't really bother. I think the voice actress for Aqua was in there at some point. She was one of the characters.
Yes, Miyuki. No, wait, that's not Aqua's voice actress, is it?
I don't know her.
Hold on.
I don't know
I'm looking it up real quick.
You can look it up, but yeah, I feel like she was in there somewhere. I recognize the Japanese voice actors by their characters they've played before. I swear one of them was Aqua in Dragon's Dogma, but I could be wrong.
Kazuma.
It's just she sounded like Aqua to me. But overall, I thought the Japanese dub was better because they did use like good voice actors for even the throwaway characters, the ones that we were going to see for one episode and never see ever again. So that's a good thing. again, maybe they blew all of their budget on getting the Japanese voice actors.
Maybe they did.
Because they're
don't know.
They're not B tier actors in my mind at all. Like the guy Nakamura, he's been in so much shit. He's like a staple of Japanese anime. So who knows? Maybe that's where all the money went.
Yeah, maybe. I can't really speak on that because I watched the entire thing in English. I felt like I should because it was my first watch through to watch it how it was originally made, because they obviously made this. I mean, even if you look at the mouth flaps, it's moving to the English words.
Yeah, it is. But it's whatever, like
it's the thing with the accents. It's really gets me because you can tell that every single person is putting on a fake accent, and I'm like, fucking Castlevania did this with, they actually hired British voice actors.
Yeah. Like I said, maybe it was Capcom cheaping out. Maybe it was Sublimation. Sublimation was just the animation studio. I don't know who did the sound mixing, but someone cheaped out somewhere. And this is kind of what you get. Subpar voice acting, subpar animation, sub everything, and it's a shame because I freaking love the setting in Dragon's Dogma. Like, it's a dark world fantasy, so we have our typical monsters and stuff, like direwolves, goblins, cyclops, and freaking
the
undead.
Story plays out as like a typical monster of the week kind of story too.
Yeah, and it's basic bitch high fantasy type setting, which is fine. Like, everything is based on Tolkien anyway, so who cares, I didn't care that much that it was basic bitch.
Yeah, I mean, it's either like Tolkien-esque monsters or like classical mythology monsters like the Cyclops.
Yeah, I honestly didn't mind that it was basic because who cares? We're following our main character. So in the game, you play as someone called the Arisen. In the anime, we find our main character, his name is Ethan, and he becomes and gets chosen as the Arisen, which is a whole...
Does the main character actually not have a name in the game?
Yeah, and there's a reason that your main character doesn't have a name, but it's because you're a playable character, That's the point.
Yeah.
You can be anyone. You can be any race, any gender, anything. The story is... It goes all right. Like, for the most part, I'd say the anime adapted 60% of the story of the game, which is not bad. It's kind of a stereotypical... In the beginning, that is, like, there's 7 episodes, right? Let's talk about the name of each episode. They're each named after a deadly sin, all right? There's the 7 deadly sins. And...
Wrath, gluttony, envy, sloth, greed, lust, pride.
Yeah. In each episode, it explores one of those facets of humanity, which is kind of cool. In a lot of the episodes, our main character, Ethan, he's put into, like, not morally ambiguous. Well, yeah, he's put into morally ambiguous situations or scenarios. Like,
Yeah, he's put into situations where the right answer is not always obvious.
Yeah, because... So let's talk about, the second episode?
Yeah, the one with the mayor, the fat mayor.
Yeah, so in the second episode, our titular character comes across a girl who's being used as a tribute to be eaten by a Cyclops. He saves her. Turns out the family had to give her up as tribute so they could survive. And then Ethan's all like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. You should have fought against the Cyclops and all this. He's an absolute good character at this point. And he's followed around by... let's talk about the first episode. I completely forgot since...
Yeah, the first episode is a thing that happens.
Yeah, so the first episode is Wrath. We follow our main character, Ethan. He's just like some hunter in this village called Casardis. He has a wife and a pseudo-son. Then a dragon comes and fucks everything up. And then Ethan gets so pissed that he goes and attacks the dragon. The dragon's like, I like your bravery, kid. You got some gusto. I'm going to eat your heart. And now you're the chosen Arisen. Then after he gets chosen as the Arisen, someone called a pawn shows up. And in the game, it's explained a little bit or a lot more what a pawn is.
I was going to say, it wasn't really explained at all in the anime.
Yeah, the only thing you learn about pawns in the anime is that they are servants of the Arisen, and they're meant to join them on their journey to fight the evil dragon, right? So it's your typical, stereotypical, like, fantasy setting of, here's your MC, here's his tragic backstory where he gets his village is attacked, he loses his loved ones, and now the big bad, the evil dragon, must be slain by our hero. And he's joined by his comrades, the pawns. That's literally it. That's how it starts out in the game as well, so it's, good job, guys. You followed the script for the beginning part of the game. You did it. So then we get to the second episode, and the pawn's name is Hannah. And pawns don't have names. He names her Hannah because his unborn child, if his unborn child was a girl, they were going to name her Hannah after his mother. I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
So the pawn's now Hannah, and now Ethan set out on an adventure. The pawn is emotionless and cold, as we see in the second episode, where he goes and saves the girl, and the pawn's like, why are you saving this girl? Like, she's no one to you. She's a freaking stranger. And Ethan's like, no, we have to, because it's the absolute good. So he saves her, brings her back to her village. Then he learns the story of why the daughter was being sacrificed. And he's like, well, fuck this Lord. Like, I'll go kill the fucking Cyclops myself. So then he meets the Lord and tells the Lord, like, we should kill the Cyclops. The Lord's like, no, I don't give a shit about that. And he's eating really well, whereas everyone else in the town, the fiefdom, is, like, starving. So Ethan's like, fuck this. I'm going to do my justice. And as your typical main character would do, he sets off on a quest to go destroy the Cyclops. And his pawn is like, no, you shouldn't do that. Like, we're on a quest to kill the dragon. Why the fuck are you even trying to help people who don't matter to you? And he's like, because it's the goodwill of humans, blah, blah, blah. You know, he's absolute good. And there's a point to this, right? Because after he kills the Cyclops, and then he kills he kills all the guards, and then he takes the Lord, and like, you're going to get judged by your people. And the people obviously hang the dude, because they're like, you stole all of our food, and you sacrificed all our kids, like, fuck you. And at this point, Ethan's like, all right, well, let's go and get all your stuff back from the castle. But now all the people who were being starved and all the villagers, they pillaged the castle and they beat each other for resources. And Ethan's like, no, there's enough for everyone. Like, you guys just got to calm down and organize. But it's like, this is what happens when you destroy a central figure. You know, in normal stories, this would end with a happy ending. But in this one, it's like Ethan's in despair because he's like, I just wanted to do good, right? He thought if he destroyed the evil king or lord of the fiefdom,
mayor, lord, whatever
he was, Ethan thought that after he destroyed him, everything would be good, but it wasn't, because now there's no more order. He destroyed the order of the town.
Yeah, he created a power vacuum.
Yeah, and that's what I thought was really interesting, because in the video game, in the source material, your actions are morally ambiguous as well. Did you really do good? Did you really do bad? Because there's ups and downs to each thing that you do. There are consequences for your actions, whether you had good intentions or not, which I freaking loved. I love that they translated that to the story from the video game to the anime. However,
yeah, it was fun to watch.
It was. However, 7 episodes was just not enough, man. Like, I understand why they did it. Obviously, time constraints, and it's good that they did 7 episodes to fit the 7 deadly sins, because as I described for episode 2, each new episode has a new sin, and it explores a different facet of humanity, right? Mm-hmm. Once we get to the last episode, we have Ethan finally facing off with the dragon, and he slays the dragon.
And the dragon represents the sin of pride.
Yes, that's the last of pride. But lo and behold, once you slay the dragon says, thank you for killing me, because now you've committed the grave sin of pride, so now you get to become the new dragon. And then Ethan's like, wait, what? And he's like, you fool, the Arisen has to follow
this. You utter fool!
You fell for it, you fool! Cross thunder, split it! Anyway, the dragon explains to Ethan that because he fell for his path, I gotta back up, hold on. So episode 2, Envy.
You mean 3, episode 3.
Episode 3, Envy, my bad. So after we do Envy, he goes through more, like, there goes through sloth, greed, and all this stuff. And Ethan as a character starts devolving. So in the very beginning, he was starry-eyed, like, all justice, the strong should protect the weak, and he wasn't driven by revenge, right?
Yeah, and it's almost like as he sees that his actions have consequences, he becomes more and more dissociated from it. It's like, nah, just fuck this, I gotta get to my end goal.
Yeah, because he starts seeing the facets of humanity, and he starts losing hope in humanity, right? Mm-hmm. In Sloth, the episode Sloth, he meets this village that was being abused by a thief lord. They were smoking weed. It was a freaking...
the whole thing is like a commentary on marijuana.
Yeah, like, smoking weed makes you lazy and all this other shit. So basically, this town he meets, they were abused by their fiefdom lord, and once the fiefdom lord learned that the dragon was attacking, he fucking left. The villagers were just like, well, we don't have a lord anymore, but all we know is
still have this fucking weed.
All we know is to fucking grow and sell weed. So they stay there and just get high and have sex all day, and they have the sin of sloth. And Ethan, he goes on an adventure through this cave to try to go find the dragon, and he finds a Hydra, he fights the Hydra escapes, and the Hydra kills the villagers, right? goes and attacks the village, and one of the characters gets eaten in that episode, and he's just like, that's where he snaps. Ethan snaps because he sees that his first of all, his pawn Hannah, who is kind of like his pseudo mate, I guess at this point. I don't know.
I guess
traveling companion.
She gets like fucking BTFO'd by the Hydra.
Yeah, and then he like goes into this like rage, and then he loses like a bit of his humanity, because then after he kills the Hydra, he blames the I don't know if he's the brother or someone else in the village who's like, this is your fault.
I think it's implied that they're lovers.
Oh, okay, that makes more sense.
I mean, given what's going on in this village, they could very well be related.
It's ambiguous. It's implied that they like each other, they love each other, but we don't know if it's familial love.
But this guy is also seen having sex with multiple women.
Yeah, so we don't know. That's why I thought they might be brother sister at first, but then at the end, where he cries those real tears, and like,
I'm pretty sure they're supposed to be like lovers. I don't think, maybe not married, but
yeah, ambiguous. We don't know.
Yeah, he obviously has a soft spot for her. That's the point.
Yeah. So before Ethan goes and fights the Hydra, right? He's talking to Hannah, and Hannah's like, "Why do you even care about these people in this mountain?" He's like, "Well, humans are stupid, but they're interesting, and that's what makes it cool." Like, or some shit like that. I'm obviously misquoting here, but
yeah, you're definitely paraphrasing, but that is basically what he says.
He basically
saying that humans are very flawed but worth saving.
Yes. But then after the Hydra attack and almost losing Hannah, he flips it. But now Hannah, instead of being robotic, starts to show emotion, and it's weird, right? And you're like, wait, what the fuck? She's supposed to be some emotionless pawn. And as it keeps going, Ethan just keeps devolving into more madness until he's full on like, freaking, once he kills the dragon, he cuts the dragon's heart out and starts eating it. And then as he's doing that, the dragon's like, fucking good job, you lose, because now that you've given in to pride, the sin of pride, you're the next fucking dragon, bitch.
It's like that scene from Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory. You get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
Yeah. Freaking. Anyway, so then Ethan calms down and he's like, wait, what do you mean? And then it's just like some crazy shit, and it's like it all comes together, right? In the last episode, it all makes sense. Why is it 7 episodes? Why was each episode focused on a facet of a deadly sin and watching humanity? It's because Ethan, as the Arisen, gets to experience humanity, and then he has a final confrontation with the dragon. And the dragon states that if he was able to confront the worst of humanity and still have his heart at the end of it, even though he technically doesn't have a heart, then he could have killed the dragon and everything would have been fine. But because he gave in to the vice of pride and was only set out for revenge after seeing humanity and being like, fuck this, they're not worth saving anymore, he becomes the freaking dragon. And it's like, that's not how the original story goes, but it's kind of similar, because the dragon has this little speech where he talks about there is a cycle, and every character born in this cycle has to play their part in this world. He's like, I'm a dragon. I don't need to eat. I don't need to fuck. I don't need to sleep. I don't need to shit. But I still kill humans because I'm a fucking dragon. And Ethan's like,
he does that whole speech like, asking me not to kill and maim is like asking you not to breathe.
Yeah. And it starts to make sense, because it's like, oh, so that's why he went through the 7 deadly sins of humanity. That's why he was exposed to all these things, and he had a choice every time. But he kept losing more and more of his humanity because he kept falling for pride, right? He kept getting engrossed in his thirst for revenge.
Which is a really good framing device for a fantasy story, by the way.
Yeah, and again, it's not as good. Honestly, I love the original story so much. I hate that it's not following the original story because it's even crazier, but it's the same type of setting. Like, there is a cycle, right? And everyone is a pawn in this cycle, right? Even the dragon, the Arisen, and even the pawns are part of this grand scheme that they have to follow. Like, and nothing really gets answered, and it leaves it ambiguous at the end. But what changes is, like, Ethan, our typical MC, he goes from starry-eyed to like this complete bastard, man, who's just setting out for revenge. And his growth is like, it's kind of similar to I wouldn't say it's similar. His growth isn't a typical like MC growth like we would see in typical fantasy genres, where
it's not the standard hero's journey character development.
Yeah, because he doesn't continually try to be good and everything works out. He literally devolves into a dragon because he gives into his base needs, which is
he
pride.
lets the sins of humanity get to him.
Yes, and that's such a good way to frame it with the 7 episodes, with seeing that. I wish there was more episodes, because it was kind of hard to get into caring about any of these humans, right? Because we were just like, who cares? Who really fucking cares?
Probably one of the bigger tragedies to me is like the shortest episode is 19. It's episode 6 is the shortest episode. It's only 19 minutes long. It's the one about lust, and that's one of the most like interesting sins to look at, because there's so many people that fall into lust in so many different ways, and they look the most shallow way that people succumb to lust, and I'm like, why?
Yeah. I personally believe episode 6, Lust, only exists to give us a little bit more backstory about our main character and his life.
Yeah.
That's what it did. It just frames that.
It's a shame they didn't explore the concept of lust more deeply, because it's such a shallow look at what lust actually is in terms of a vice.
Yeah. I still like the story, because at the end of the day, it did try to convey its message properly, and it did give us sufficient information. I just wish there was more, because obviously you can't explore every freaking facet and every single character, because in the video game, in the source material, you get to stay with these characters for a lot longer. You know, it's a freaking 60-80 hour game to beat one time, and you got to beat it twice to actually get the true ending. So, you know, you're gonna play this for over 100 hours. You're gonna get to
typical Japanese game.
Typical JRPGs, got to play it twice to actually get the real ending. You're going to be spending at least 100 hours playing this, so you're going to get very intimate with the story, with the land, with each character, with each NPC, each quest that you do, and you get to learn more of their backstory, and everything becomes ambiguous. Like, nothing is black and white in this world, which is what they did a great job with conveying into the show. I just wish...
Is the source material of the video game, is it like... Dark isn't the right word. Is it as explicit as the anime?
No, there's no actual fucking sex scenes. Kind of.
Okay. I was curious about that.
There's no full frontal nudity, no.
I was curious about that, because there's actual tits in this anime. I'm thinking, surely that's not in the actual game.
There's literally 2 episodes where titties come out. The one where there's that whore of a frickin' wife who's like...
Whore?
She's a frickin' whore. And literally the succubus. So there's only 2 times where you saw titties in the anime. So it wasn't too graphic in my mind, but no, there's no full frontal nudity or anything in the game. It's more about violence and stuff than it is about like sex. But
I was just curious about that.
Yeah, no, it's good. But
I've never played the game.
Honestly, I can't. I want to recommend it, but I know it's not as good as other dark fantasy games. I just really like the story and how it's just a crazy fucking story. And that's what I wish they explored more of. I wish they spent more time exploring the world so we would get to know humanity better. You know, they just showed like a shallow facet of a fucking pride, or not as pride, of a one of the deadly sins, and then they just resolve it and move on. And that was what's really weak about the series of the show series, that we don't have enough time to build anything.
Yeah, and it is a shame, because I think part of this may actually be because of how limited of a runtime it has.
Yeah.
Because it is only 7 episodes, but it's structured very much like a video game. It feels like, okay, something happens, like an inciting incident happens at the very beginning. All right, well, we got to go fight the dragon. Well, here's our 50 side quests we're going to do along the way, and our little mini bosses before we get to the actual boss.
Yeah.
I mean, it plays out very much like you would think a video game would, and they kind of chopped off all the actual video game elements, like the leveling up and all that shit.
Yeah. It's what makes it not as coherent of a story, because we don't see the stuff in the background. There is no time reference either. There's no frame where we can...
But at the end of this, I don't know how much time has passed from the first episode to the last episode.
Yeah.
It could be a week. It could be 3 years. I don't know.
Yeah. I believe in the original game, everything happens in a span of like 2 months or something. I want to say
I could buy that.
But again, they don't actually frame anything like that in the anime. Like, you don't... Every episode literally is just episodic. Like, every episode's a new story, a new setting, new characters, a new sin. And
it's like they hit the reset button at the end of every episode too, because like you'll see that there's a big fight, and you know, someone's armor may be, or you know, outfit may be really fucking messed up, and it doesn't look like they've been anywhere else, and they move right into the second episode. Everyone's armor's clean, no one's injured.
Yeah, and it's It's weird, and it's just they didn't spend enough time, and I get it, time constraints and all this stuff, but that's why I said it feels like it's more of a proof of concept than anything else.
It almost feels like it may have been a passion project.
Maybe, and it tries its best to convey the story of Dragon's Dogma from the video game to a freaking anime, and it does all right. Like, it's not terrible, but there's a lot of things that don't get answered, and it doesn't make sense unless you played the game. Like, so we follow Ethan as a typical MC, but we see his growth, and it spirals out of control where he gives into sins. But now, how about Hannah, right? Hannah, she's a pawn. Nothing's really explained about her in the show other than pawns are just servants of the Arisen. When an Arisen is chosen, the pawn will find the Arisen, and they got to go slay the dragon. That's literally it. That's all we learn.
Yeah, I also love how all the characters seem to just accept all of this at face value and not question any of it.
Yeah, so in the original story, we know that time and time again, there's always been Arisen and there have always been pawns, and they're just a part of society. One of the main characters in the game is the Duke, and he was an Arisen, and he went to go fight the dragon, and that's kind of it. Like, everyone knows that Arisen exists, and they know that they're Arisen are destined to fight the dragon and fend him off.
Yeah, I do feel like this like the whole Arisen pawn thing, it raises so many questions, none of which, not only are they not answered, they're not even fucking addressed in the show.
and that's, again, one of the world building things that they just fucking skip, because it's like, well, I think the only people who are going to watch this are people who play the game, so they'll know. And I'm like, I know.
That's exactly who it feels like this is for. This feels like that's why I think I said it feels like a passion project. It feels like a passion project done by someone who played the game, who loved it, and wants to share this with other people who have played the game.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that, because, again, if you've never played the game, you don't know the story about the game, and you watch this, you probably won't like it. In fact, as I was looking up stuff for this show, a lot of people didn't like it. You know, I think it's on IMDb, it has a 6.5 rating.
Yeah, it's got a similar score on Mal as well.
And on freaking, like, a bunch of critics were like, yeah, this was just like, there was not enough story. We didn't understand what was going on, this and that.
And it feels, you look at it and you're like, there's a world here that could be explored very deeply, it seems. You're just not doing it.
Yeah, like, if you turn this into a 24-episode run, you could probably get a decent story out of it, and it's pretty fucking nuts, the story for Dragon's Dogma. But, again, 7 episodes, time constraints, and a lot of the people who reviewed this obviously didn't play the game, so... But, you know, I'm not going to tell you, oh, to enjoy this show, you need to go play the game. Like, that's fucking stupid. A show... Like, when you look at a show like The Witcher series on Netflix, freaking bless Henry Cavill. Fucking... Anyway,
I'm just gonna say this: Henry Cavill's hot.
Yeah, praise Geralt. Like, The Witcher, even though I played the series and I love the game series, I've never read the books, unfortunately, but I played the games, and that's good enough for me. I freaking love The Witcher on Netflix. Like, they did a fucking fantastic job translating the game series and the book series into a show. Like,
the problem with it, though, is if you go in knowing absolutely nothing about The Witcher, you're going to be confused as fuck.
Yeah, you would be confused, but it's still a good story. That's the great thing about it. Like, even though you don't know anything about the, like, what the fuck a Witcher is, you don't know anything about the monsters or the lore or why all these characters matter to the main character, you can still have a great time. You
just know that Henry Cavill has a nice body.
Well, you just have a great time following Geralt around, or Henry Cavill around as Geralt, and just learning about the world. And that's what's good about it. You know, it doesn't have to be faithful 100% to the source to be a good story. And that's where Dragon's Dogma's anime fails, because it's like, it does have a decent way of adapting the main story of the video game, but there's just not enough exploration, there's not enough getting to know people, and you don't get invested enough to actually care, and it feels very flat. And it's until the last 2 episodes where we get the backstory of Ethan and stuff, and we learn about the Dark Arisen, the twist, you know, or not the Dark Arisen, about the dragon who was, I was an Arisen too, but I gave into pride, so now I'm a dragon, and since you killed me, now you're the next dragon, Ethan. Ha 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 ha. Fucking Thanos snap out of existence, like, and it's
and then, like, there's that whole portal thing that he flies into. That's never explained. Of course, that's how the dragon came into the world originally too. So, and it's like it's never even mentioned. It's not explained.
Yeah. So that's, again, part of the game. Like, you learn about this in the game.
I will say, if nothing else, this has actually made me kind of interested to go. try and play the game and see what it's like.
Yeah, some people speculated that Capcom greenlit this entire series just to get more interest into the first game, so that way they can see if they want to make a second game. Because a second game would be pretty fucking cool, given how the original game ends. But yeah, so Hannah
nice strategy. Just wished it would have worked out for you.
So Hannah as a pawn, she starts off robotic, but then at the end, she has human emotions, right? When Ethan is turning into the dragon, he begs her to kill him because he's like, I don't want to be a dragon. I don't want to kill people. And then Hannah's like tears in her eyes, and she's like, I can't do it. And it's like, it's a great reversal, right? She comes off as this robotic, cold, we're only here for the mission, don't do anything else but the mission, to finally thinking about consequences, thinking about other people, and thinking about wrong and right. So that's weird because we learned that pawns in the video game, we know that pawns have no souls. That's why they're pawns, right? They can literally be revived. And in the show, they kind of explain it like when Hannah gets attacked by the Hydra, she like gets knocked out, but then she revives. And he's like, we're not like regular humans. When we die, we'll revive eventually. And that's kind of how it is in the game too. When your pawn dies, you can go to a summoning stone, and pick them back up. So
this is what's known as making a saving throw, boys and girls.
And it's, again, a lot of this stuff is not understood because you got to play the game to know it, right? But the reason why Hannah becomes like more human-like, right? After her arisen, the person she's supposed to be protecting and on the journey with, he becomes the dragon, and now she's the human one, right? And it's weird. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make any sense, but it's that twist where you're like, I want to know more. I'm going to do major fucking spoilers for the video game.
Oh boy. Here we go.
This is actually the meat of the fucking episode, all right? So, in the original
50 minutes in. Good job.
I know, right? There's a lot to talk about. This story is fucking nuts, okay? So, in the original story, the dragon gets summoned every 50 or 100 years, and every time the dragon is summoned, he finds someone who has courage. So, basically, when he attacks and someone is willing to actually fight him, even though he's an absolute evil in the world, he chooses them as the Arisen. The Arisen's task is to go kill the dragon. So you're joined by the pawn, you go and kill the dragon, but then when you finally kill the dragon, you learn the truth. The dragon is stuck in an infinite cycle, right? And when you kill the dragon, he's like, if you kill me, you kill yourself because I have your heart. So then you're like, oh, well, that's not good. So you have a choice. Do you fight the dragon or not? Because the dragon's like, if you don't kill me, I will give you everything you want. Power, fame, riches, your own country, whatever. But if you choose to kill him, you as well die. You no longer will have power as the Arisen, and it's a trial that you're set out to do from the beginning. And it's super crazy. At the end of the day, if you choose to kill him, then you actually unlock the final trial. Well, guess what? He wasn't the one manipulating everything. There's someone like else that you have to fight, and oh god, it's about an infinite cycle of like being born and death, right?
Yeah, it's like death and rebirth.
Yeah, so the story in the anime kind of covers it a little bit, but basically in the game, what happens is you find out there's an evil, bigger bad than the dragon, and the dragon, just like in the show was saying, he was just playing his role. He was meant to come out every 50 or so years and fight against humanity until an Arisen can actually conquer him. And then when you conquer the dragon, it gives you the right to challenge God. And you meet God, who is the overseer of the world, and he's like, hey, guess what? Your world, infinite cycle of birth and death. So everything ends and then everything restarts. And that's what the dragon's there for. Until an Arisen is strong enough to fight them, then they get to challenge God. Basically, it's not, they're called the Overseer, but they're basically God, because they stand and watch the infinite cycle. So once you
it's
kill...
like the, well, this is kind of spoilers too, I guess, for Goblin Slayer. It's kind of like how that whole logic of that world works.
Yeah. So you challenge God, you beat God, then guess what? That God, he was also an Arisen, and it was his fate that he challenged the dragon and he won, so he became the new god of the world. So you, as an Arisen, become the new god of the world, right?
Oh boy, this is like Godception.
Yeah, so as the new god of the world, the cycle repeats, and the only way you can break the cycle is to kill yourself. So once you kill yourself, the pawn that you've been with the entire time, because you create your own pawn and you can summon 2 more, so you have like 3 party members, but the pawn that you create takes on your personality when you kill yourself, and they get cast back into the world, and they replay through the world. The pawn is now you in the world, in the new world, where you just killed yourself. So
Holy shit, man. My brain's about to explode.
Exactly. So that's why the pawn becomes more human. That's why Hannah becomes human and has emotions, because...
Okay, that explains that at least.
Yeah.
My head hurts now.
It's freaking crazy. And then also, now, in your New Game Plus, in the video game, when you play as your pawn, when you get back to the end game again, guess who the new overseer is? It's your old person. It was your old Arisen. Because now he took the place of God. So you have to fight him to break the cycle again, to actually find out who's the true God, who's the one controlling the fate of the world. And it's this like freaking giant tentacle monster, Eldritch horror, and it's fucking crazy. And that's why I was like,
Cthulhu.
Yeah, it's freaking Elder God Cthulhu. It's more like a beholder. There's actual beholders in the game, but
God,
yeah, it's nuts, dude. The freaking video game story is freaking crazy. But it all comes back to the basic of there's an infinite cycle. And you as the Arisen have to follow your fate, but you can break fate. But the problem was Ethan did not break fate. He fell into the trap, right? He followed his fate and he didn't break the chain. And that's why Hannah now becomes human, and it's her turn. That's why he says, Hannah, please protect the humans, even though they're freaking annoying and stuff. And she's like, yes, as you wish, Arisen, I will protect the humans. And that's kind of like the passing of the torch, like in the original game, because now your pawn is the one responsible for protecting everyone. So if they do a season 2... I hope that they make it so Hannah now goes and fights Ethan, and she can break the infinite cycle. And then you get to fight the Eldritch Horrors, and then it's like,
I feel like at this point, that's the only thing that can happen, where they turn Hannah into the main character, unless they do some kind of a prequel where they show what happened with the dragon before Ethan.
Yeah, and what should happen next is Hannah should become the next Arisen. That's like supposedly, because that's how the cycle works. The Arisen goes and fights the big bad. If he beats the big bad, then his pawn becomes the next Arisen. And it's like...
I'm assuming if he doesn't beat the big bad, then just the dragon goes and finds a new person.
Well, in the story, there's 2 options that happens if you don't beat the big bad. So in the DLC Dark Arisen, it tells you a story about people who lost against fate. People who ran away from their fate. They were too scared to fight the dragon. So they didn't even have the balls to go and fight them. And they basically are transported to this island where it's called the Dark Isle. And basically they're ghosts of the past that were like, they're trapped in hell and stuff because they ran away from destiny. But
so it's kind of like a fantasy limbo.
Yeah, and it's super cool. But in the original game, the Duke of the Kingdom, he was originally an Arisen, and he went to slay the dragon, right? And the dragon leaves, and the Duke comes back. But surprisingly, the Duke never ages, but he's crazy. So what happens in the game when you fight the dragon is he'll take your most beloved, and he'll give you an offer. He says, look, you can try to fight me, but I'm going to kill you, and I'm going to kill your most beloved. But if you don't fight me, I'll go away, and I'll give you infinite power, fame. You'll be immortal, but you won't have a heart. You'll be an Arisen still. And the only people who can tell you're an Arisen are pawns, because they have the hand thing where they put it next to you and you glow. So the Duke doesn't allow pawns into his castle because he's afraid of that happening, of people finding out the truth that he actually didn't fight the dragon and made it go away. He gave in and said, you can take my wife and you can give me infinite power. So that's what's another crazy plot twist about the story. It's like
he basically made a deal with the devil.
Yeah, because he challenged fate, but at the end he took the hand of the dragon instead of trying to break the chain. Right, and that's what's crazy about the story. Like, there's so much to explore in the freaking Dragon's Dogma universe.
It also shows that there's not with the way this story is set up. If my headache will subside about it,
yeah, no, dude,
there's more than one way. There's more than one way to approach the problem. Like, you can try and bargain with evil. You can try and run away from evil. You can try and face evil head on.
Yeah, and it's a super Gynax level of ending of mind fuckery, and that's what I really loved about the game series, because it's like, what?
John, I'm so fucked up.
I know. Well, it's been running for over an hour, but overall, what were your thoughts on the series? Like, now that I've explained a little bit about the game series, does it make it sound like are you more interested in the Netflix series? Are you less interested? Like, what?
I feel like my thoughts of the actual anime itself, I think it sounds like it's a huge missed opportunity.
Yeah.
To do further exploration. Like, the best parts of the story were when they were exploring human nature.
Yeah.
Like, all the different aspects of how humans can be evil to one another. Like, that was really fun and cool to watch, and I thought it was done really, really well. I mean, take all the technical stuff out of the equation. I mean, the story is still the most important, and I think in that instance, it was very much a missed opportunity based on what you're telling me about the actual story of the game.
Yeah. Like I said, they condensed it into like 60% of the original story and rewrote it, but it still has the same essence.
I really hope it was because of budget and not just because they were trying to be cute with a 7-episode count and, titling all the episodes of 7 Deadly Sins. I mean, like, what a waste if that's the case.
Yeah, but it was big brain, like 300 IQ, though, for doing the 7 Deadly Sins, because it plays into the last episode, right? About the 7 deadly sins and humanity and breaking the chain and falling into destiny and following the path of destiny.
Also, praise them, and I assume the original creators of the game, for realizing so many people think that revenge is a sin of wrath. No, it's a sin of pride.
Yeah, because it's not wrath that drives you. It's the principle, right? As they say.
So many people think revenge is actually about anger. No, it's about having too much pride in yourself.
Yeah, and not letting it go. And not doing it for the good of the people, but for the good of yourself and for your soul.
Yeah. And again, it's another example of fantasy stories showing how revenge is ultimately a self-defeating principle.
Yeah. And again, see, the concepts are there, right? The source material, the concepts from the source material are there. It has the makings of a very cool world and very cool setting, but it just fails to deliver. Man, I'm so disappointed. Like, I wanted to like this because, again, the main stuff is fucking nuts. It's a 100-hour game that I've replayed twice. No, 3 times now. I've put in 300 hours into this game.
I mean, I wanted to because it was sold to me as a mature fantasy series, and that's something I've actually come to love. Like Castlevania, I fucking loved it.
Yeah. Where do you think the story is going to go from here? Like, do you think it's going to actually get a season 2 or anything like that? I
don't think so. I'd be surprised if it did.
Maybe because I really want them to do a season 2, and I want them to expand more upon, like, why did the pawn suddenly gain human emotions, and why did the dragon go into a different portal and all this other stuff. Like, again, because probably if you've lived in this far, you know from the video game what I said, why it matters, like why everything happened. But I want to see it in anime form as well. Like, again, I love the music. I freaking love the scoring. Not so much anything else.
I mean, even the terrible CGI it could take if the story was just a little bit better.
Yeah.
Because I've said it on this podcast many a time. I mean, with a great story, I can overlook a lot.
and that's the problem. This has such a great story to be told.
They're just not telling it.
Yeah.
Shall we wrap it up there?
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's going to get a season 2. I'd be very surprised. Then again, it is Netflix. Although I hesitate with what's going on with Netflix right now to give them any kind of praise. But one thing they do throw around is money.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to touch what else is going on with Netflix right now. I'm just going to move on.
Yeah, no, I was about to do a bit, but I don't want to do a bit about it. It's been done to death.
Yeah. Much like this outro. Thank you all there for dropping in to listen to us. We hope you enjoyed it because we always enjoy bringing this stuff to you. Check out the description below to find links to Anime Club After Dark on other platforms, on our social media accounts, and link to our Discord server. Check out our merch store where we got cool shirts, stickers, and more you can buy. We also have affiliate links below where you can buy Camp Buddy. If you do buy from those affiliate links, it really does help us out on the podcast. And with that, I have been your host, Alex, and I will see you next time. Say goodnight, John.
Wait a second. Wasn't I hosting?
Well, yes, but you were paranoid about fucking up the outro, but so here we are.
Good point. Good night.